Hello, and welcome to this edition of Ritter's Rant. It's the first rant of a new year, and we're 3 days into a new year, and we've already seen manifestations of what we can expect for the rest of the year. The illegal military operation in Venezuela, the kidnapping of a sovereign leader of a sovereign state by the military forces of another nation operating void of any legality whatsoever. But that's not the big takeaway because, I mean, come on, the United States has been doing this for decades now. What was, after all, the invasion and occupation of Iraq in 2003, if not an illegal invasion to remove the sovereign leader of a sovereign state. What makes this different is that we are seeing a new approach, or at least I think the maturity of an old approach of regime change. Ask yourselves how the Maduro takedown came to pass. I can just tell you, with what limited information I have about how Delta Force and Task Force 160 operate, the notion that this small raid would have been done in anything other than a permissive environment, is ludicrous. You don't send 35 troopers, no matter how well trained they are, into a heavily defended space. They went into a permissive environment where they were led to believe that certain things would happen and certain things wouldn't happen, and they were able to rapidly affect the detaining of Maduro and his wife, suffer no casualties, no loss of equipment, etc. If they had done this against a heavily fortified position, against a president who was willing to give his life in defense of his authority as the leader of a sovereign state, they would have lost everybody. So we know right off the bat that something is amiss. The other thing we know is that this isn't your normal regime change where you topple the leader and all of the structures of authority. The Venezuelan military, the Venezuelan internal security forces remain intact, in place. This means that somebody somewhere betrayed their country, some Venezuelan somewhere, a lot of Venezuelans somewhere. It appears that almost the totality of the Venezuelan political and economic elite are on the CIA payroll, that they have taken a significant amount of money or the promise of future money. Remember, Venezuela sits on top of the world's largest proven reserves of oil. This is oil that President Trump claims is American. Chevron's in there actively trying to exploit this oil for their economic benefit. And some of the largesse that's accrued from the sale of this oil can be used to enrich a significant number of Venezuelan economic and political and military elite. It appears that this is what has happened. Basically, the United States used sanctions in Venezuela to create economic difficulty, and then leverage the economic potential that comes with the lifting of sanctions to create an environment of hope, of anticipation that then was not manifested by the political actions of their leader. And so these people turned on their leader, took the CIA money, and allowed Maduro to disappear. Now, why do I bring this up? Because in Iran today, we have a similar situation. We have a situation where the Iranian government has operated far too long under the false belief that there could be normalized relations with the West, that if we could just lift sanctions and get this economic interaction back in play, that things could be normal. And so they allowed themselves to create the anticipation of the lifting of sanctions, of what life could be in a post-sanctions environment, only to find that the United States was not interested in lifting sanctions. And now you have people who are anticipating economic benefits, but they're not getting it. And the United States says, don't blame us, blame your government. And now there's an opposition that's rising up in the streets saying that the government has failed the Iranian people. This is the goal. This is the objective, to use sanctions to create a situation of political chaos, domestic political chaos that could lead to the toppling of a regime. And that's the goal and objective of Iran. I don't know if we'll be successful or not, probably not. But again, it just points to trouble. Russia. And this is the big one. You see, we have sanctions imposed on Russia. We had significant sanctions imposed since 2014. The sanctions that were imposed after 2022 were specifically designed to destroy Russia, to destroy the Russian economy, to bring Russia down, to collapse Russia, to bring about political change in Russia. That means that Vladimir Putin is gone. That's the goal. That's the objective of these sanctions. And yet today we have Donald Trump saying that he wants to have good relations with Russia. We want to have normalized economic relations. And we see at this parallel diplomatic track taking place with Kirill Dmitriev, this former Goldman Sachs banker, now running a sovereign wealth fund in Russia, working with Steve Witkoff, one of President Trump's real estate buddies out of New York City, and Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, who has made a career out of recently out of exploiting national tragedy for his own economic benefit. Just take a look at what he's trying to do in Gaza. Now they're meeting in the Kremlin with Vladimir Putin, talking about this great economic potential that can exist once sanctions are lifted. But the United States will never lift sanctions against Russia, never. And the proof in that is what happened just a week ago. The drone attack by the Ukrainians on a facility that is a presidential facility where President Putin has a residence. It now appears that this drone attack was facilitated by the Central Intelligence Agency using intelligence data gathered from American military intelligence resources. The 21 of the 91 drones that attacked were downed with their guidance systems intact, and the Russians have recovered these and have evaluated them. They handed one of these chips over to the United States. They didn't say what was in it. They simply said that you can look for yourselves. But what was in that was proof that, one, it was a presidential facility that was designated for attack. Two, the timing of that was linked to an ongoing conversation between Trump and Putin. Three, that the quality of the intelligence that was loaded onto that chip could only come from national intelligence collection resources from the United States. And there's some digital fingerprints, too, that show that the data was processed by American Department of Defense entities before being plugged in. So this was an American attack against the Russian president, not to kill him. This attack was never designed to kill. It was designed to weaken Vladimir Putin, to show that Vladimir Putin is a weak man. Maybe his time is past. It's time for him to step aside. Oh, by the way, sanctions could be lifted, but President Trump is very upset with President Putin about what he's doing in Ukraine. We could get these sanctions lifted if Putin just did what he's supposed to, but he's not doing it, and he's a weak man. Meanwhile, Kirill Dmitriev sitting down, meeting with Jared Kushner, sending out videos of him, body surf or surfing in Miami, as if everything's normal. Everything isn't normal. As the Russians said to the United States without saying it, we know everything. When they turned over that chip, they said, we know everything. We know what you did. The United States can never be trusted again. And it shouldn't be trusted again, not in its current manifestation. And it's time for Russia to realize that there is no, golden opportunity awaiting the lifting of sanctions. This is a pipe dream that is put together by the CIA, by Radcliffe and company, designed to create the false promise of hope. If we just get sanctions lifted, there will be economic benefit accruing to the Russians. And there will be a certain segment of Russian population in the political and economic elite who believe this, who start planning for it, betting on it, and then they're frustrated when it doesn't happen, and they're looking for somebody to blame. And that person is President Putin, who's very weak, by the way, because the United States attacked him and Putin didn't do anything about it. This is the plan. This is what's happening. And it's time, sadly, and I believe the Russians have recognized this. They are saying that, negotiations as they had previously existed don't exist anymore. But it may be time just to tell Kirill Dmitriev that's the last trip to Miami you make. And maybe Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner never visit the Kremlin again. Because if Russia allows the United States to continue to facilitate this notion of economic benefit accruing once sanctions are lifted, and this becomes a legitimate line of thought when sanctions aren't lifted, the Russians are going to be looking for somebody to blame. And the United States is trying to make it clear who they want the Russian people to blame. And that's Vladimir Putin. Because our goal has never been to live peacefully with a Russia governed by Vladimir Putin. Our goal has always been to live with a subordinated Russia, collapsed, kneeling at our feet, and Vladimir Putin removed from power. It's time, because of what happened in Venezuela, for people to recognize that this is a pattern that is repeating itself around the world, in Iran and in Russia. That's been our rant. Next time something crosses my mind, I'll be sure to let you know. Happy New Year. 2026 is shaping up to be a year of great interest, and that's not necessarily a good thing.